Easy, do it like that. All right, it looks like we are on the channel. We're recording now. Conscious Approach, new episode. What's going on, everybody out there? Thank you for tuning in. Thanks for watching the video. I certainly appreciate it. My name is JV Wins, joined as usual by my man Dogon SS. Saturday, May the 7th. So we're going to have a good time discussing some interesting topics trending throughout the week. I ran across a clip on my usual content factory World Star that I think that this clip typifies some of or at least it typifies one aspect of why it seems to be trending in a strange direction when it comes to how to successfully navigate the world of relationships. We've obviously made a lot of videos and talked a lot about this particular subject matter in the past, but it's the gift that keeps on giving, right? Because we seem to routinely run across pieces of content that give us an opportunity to explore yet another aspect of why this situation seems to be becoming more and more tenuous. It seems by the day, at least. So we're going to go ahead and pull this up and we're going to run it. This particular clip, I'm not exactly sure the name of the platform. The credit goes to @Mr_J Hill. I think that's the guy in this clip's name. I'm not sure what the name of that particular podcast is, however, but still wanted to get at least that much credit attribution out there. And so there's these two women who are on this particular podcast talking about how they cannot consider dating or being in a relationship with a man who works. And that's pretty much the gist of it. They can't be with a guy who works. And so we'll play it and then we'll react to it once we're done watching the clip.
You always say you can't deal with a guy that got a job?
Do you have a job, Jay?
Yes.
Okay. Why can I deal with you? The reason why I can
She said it as like it was like an option.
No, it's not an option. That's what I was gonna say. With respect to your girlfriend. That's not what I
She's not gonna take it personally.
Yeah,
I can't think about it if got a job either. That's why I said I
don't want
want
nobody with a job. Because
if we want to go to Jamaica to see your girl's family, you can't because you gotta
not
when it comes, but you can't tell them like, oh, I gotta go to Jamaica tomorrow. Like you gotta.
No, but when it
so
comes
you can just leave your job.
I mean,
anytime, like right, like you told us we had to push the time back because you didn't get off work till a certain time. Like that already is like a hassle.
Okay.
No, but for me, no, it's not a red flag. But for me personally, because I know when a lot of people say, "Oh, I can't date a man with a job," a lot of people on the internet take it to offense. But me, Destiny, cannot date a man with a job. One, because I'm very spontaneous, and I need wait, Jay, before you get to leaning back and breaking the chair. What I'm saying is, and I also need a man to understand where I'm at in the moment that I'm at. Like, I probably will have a week where I work so much, and then I have a week where I don't work at all. You get what I'm saying? So as an entrepreneur, it's like it's very up and down, and I just want somebody to understand the mental state that I'm in. Sometimes I get really, really depressed because I always have to show up for people. So then I'll be like, I want a man to be there to comfort me during that moment. I just feel like
so you want a maid too?
I don't want a maid. I want a man.
All right. So there you have it. She talked about needing spontaneity, and apparently guys who work can't be spontaneous. She talked about how she has an up and down, inconsistent work schedule due to her being an entrepreneur, quote unquote. And so therefore, she needs a man who is able, and I'm paraphrasing, to be available to tend to some of her emotional needs when necessary during her down periods of work time, which don't happen on a consistent basis because of her entrepreneurial type lifestyle. And those were some of the points that she brought up. She also, the other girl talked about, spontaneous is like, oh, we want to be able to go to Jamaica. So that's where the whole money and resource angle comes in. They're coding it as spontaneity, but really what it's about is money. What did you think about what they had to say about that? They can't date men who work.
I get where they're coming from. I get where they're coming from, but it's just it's a surface logic. I don't think it's well thought out, and so I think that they would have to look a little bit deeper into their statements. I think they've dated guys that have had 9 to 5s before, and by dealing with those guys that have 9 to 5s, they feel like it's restrictive somehow, some way, and so due to that restriction, they just don't respect it. So, due to them not respecting it, they don't know how, which I don't feel like they should not respect it. So, the problem lies with them not respecting people who have a boss. So, when you're dealing with this type of spirit, I just really feel like they are in a space where they see the value of working for yourself, and for a person who chooses to be a paycheck slave, in their opinion, is somebody that is not um, cut from their cloth. So they want to hang around a guy who is an entrepreneur himself. So I think that's my initial take on it. I get their logic, but how she's articulating it makes it seem like she's very shallow. So she might be a shallow person who, but I can't tell. But from that statement, it seems quite not well thought out. So
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. I do think that it comes from a shallow perspective as well. Um, so, like, I'm just confused. Like, okay, so first of all, um, the overarching thing for me is we've consumed a lot of content. You know, we watch a lot of stuff. Whether it's being on social media, whether it's being on YouTube, whether it's just generally being on the internet. So there's a lot of content out there about women and men and relationships and whatnot, right?
Mhm.
So all of that content that we see, what are some of the things that are in common with a lot of the stuff that we see? At least I'll speak for myself. I won't speak for you. A lot of the content that I run across is usually how to fix and repair and make a better way for Black relationships. Now, across the board for everybody, it doesn't matter what your race or ethnicity is. Across the board for everybody in the world today, in the modern world, relationships are kind of tricky and tough. So we acknowledge that. But based on what I've seen, it just kind of seems to me as though Black relationships seem to be in the worst position of all. And so knowing that based upon what my observations have been, when I see clips like this, it kind of just, and these were 2 Black females in this clip, it kind of further informs me on why we have kind of gone sideways. I just think that perspectives have just kind of gotten out of whack. Now, what I don't understand about this particular type of point of view is you talk about wanting to be, first of all, let me just say off the jump that in spirit, I agree with what she is saying, in that I am somebody who is a champion for compatibility. I believe in the notion of compatibility. So I do think that it is no coincidence that people in Hollywood end up being in relationships together. People in it's very common to see people who are in the same industry end up pairing up. It's because it's like you get one another and you live the same sort of lifestyle. You adhere to the same norms and customs and standards. And so there's a compatibility there that makes it make sense. Mm-hmm. And so if, in terms of her being an entrepreneur, again, I'm giving her credit for that label. I don't know who she is or what she does, but I'm just going to give her the benefit of the doubt because that's what she called herself.
Yeah.
But I don't know what she does, so I don't know what she means by entrepreneur. I mean, these women are on these women who are on Instagram and OnlyFans, they call themselves entrepreneurs. But in my opinion, you're not an entrepreneur. You're just leveraging your physical appearance for financial gain. That doesn't make you an entrepreneur. You're not necessarily contributing anything to society. You're just benefiting off of the machine of these visual mediums. To me, in my opinion, I don't put that in the same bucket as true entrepreneurism. But that's just my opinion. Nevertheless, I'm going to give her the benefit of the doubt for being an entrepreneur. If she is, in fact, an entrepreneur, then I understand what she's saying based upon my belief in the principle of compatibility. She lives a certain type of way. Therefore, it makes the most sense for her to pair with men who can understand and relate to that same sort of grind and lifestyle. So from that standpoint, I don't completely disagree with what she's saying. However, where I do kind of get lost in the shuffle is when she starts bringing in all of these qualifiers like spontaneity and emotional needs. Like, where did we get to the point where a man who works is not spontaneous and therefore cannot tend to your needs? That's where I'm drawing the distinction. Where did we get to a point in which we conflate working with no spontaneity? Because I know a lot of guys, and I put myself in this category, who do work and are far more spontaneous than a guy who is running around trying to sell t-shirts and CDs all day long. That guy is, by definition, an entrepreneur. He's not beholden to a check writer. He grinds and he makes his own money and he makes his own schedule, but he's broke. Mm-hmm. He's like a struggle rapper. So according to the logic of women like this, they'd rather be with a struggle rapper or a guy of that same ilk than to be with a guy who's maybe an engineer or an architect, somebody who makes very good money, who can afford to do things that she would like to do, who can afford to go on Jamaica, as they like to say. But there's just simply some planning that would be involved in making that happen, because you do have to, at least to a certain degree, respect the fact that you do have an institution that you are employed by. So, like, we've kind of gotten to this point, and I've seen a lot of this rhetoric coming from a lot of women these days, where we are conflating working with no spontaneity. Like, I remember, and I don't know where these conflations come from and why we leap to these absolute conclusions. I remember one of these topics that we did a while back. It may have been the April Mason thing. Mm-hmm. One of these topics that we did, and there was the woman was talking about how if you want me to be the person who is tending to the household or to the kids, you have to be making all the money because I can't work. And it was somewhere, the point that I was trying to make was something along the lines of, when did I wasn't aware that tending to the house or tending to the maintenance of the relationship and the family, even though from a physical standpoint it is work, and I acknowledge that, when did that become sort of like the same as work, or the same as like earning money by working a job or something like that, and therefore you can't do it because I'm not going to do both. I'm not going to work a job. I'm not going to be an employee and be somebody who tends to the house and the family and the relationship. And I think the point that I was trying to make was, when did those two things become mutually inclusive? Like, I didn't know that we were conflating maintenance of a relationship and a marriage with working or lack thereof. And I kind of see the same thing going on here. Like, where did we decide as a society that if you work, you must therefore inherently not be spontaneous? To me, there's no logic there. And that's when I kind of draw my own conclusion that this kind of comes from a shallow place, that it's a bit of a shallow perspective. Because you can't tell me that you'd rather be with the struggle rapper or with the guy who is spotty or hit or miss when it comes to making his money, but he's an entrepreneur, over some guy who has a career and he's done quite well for himself and can essentially call his own shots. He just happens to be employed by an institution, and he can afford the lifestyle that you think that you deserve, but he just so happens to be a quote unquote employee. You can't convince me that that doesn't make sense. But based upon this logic, it kind of seems like that's what they're suggesting. And just, for me, moreover, what makes this dangerous and what makes me nervous about this, what scares me, is that this type of ideology is becoming more commonplace, where you have a lot of females who, to use your word, disrespect the notion of being someone who works. So if you work and you put on your bootstraps and you have a career and you've made something of yourself, now that is no longer a level of success that is tantamount to being able to seek a gainful relationship with an attractive woman. And I fundamentally don't agree with that. But I do think that this type of thought process is becoming more common. I just think that it kind of comes from a shallow place. I think that if she had said, I think that if she replaces entrepreneur with rich man, I think that that is really, honestly, I think that that is more so the emotion. I think that that's really the thought that she is eliciting here. When she's talking about she can't be with a guy who works, like, so you can't be with an A&R record executive, you can't be with a Wall Street person, you can't be with a guy who works in the tech industry or cybersecurity. Like, these are guys who make top 10% money, but by the letter of the law, they are employees. They do work. So I think what she was trying to get at, and I'm understand at this point I'm kind of putting words in her mouth, but again, I'm trying to give her the benefit of the doubt. So I think what she was really saying was, I can't be with a guy who has not become someone who is, if he's not rich already, on his way to being rich, but has ample money and resources so that he can afford me the type of lifestyle that I want to have. But she coded it as entrepreneur because, especially for us as Black people, entrepreneur is what is most commonly made synonymous with a man who has money and resources. I don't think it's the same way with other races of people. I think that that's something that is kind of sort of unique unto us as a subgroup, is this whole thing about entrepreneurism. So like, with Black men, Black people in general, those who have money and resources, and entrepreneurism has kind of become synonymous when really they're not mutually inclusive. But I think that that's what she was getting at. I think she was making a play about the money and resources, about being with a rich man. But she didn't say that. She just said, you got to be an entrepreneur and you can't be somebody who works, because in her mind, a guy who works must not be a guy who can provide me with said lifestyle, must not be a guy who has the money and resources that I'm looking for. That's kind of what I think was going on in her mind. But when she processes it, she processes it as a guy who works versus a guy who's an entrepreneur. Either way, I still think that it's a scary mentality to have. I find it to be frightening because, like I said before, you have a lot of guys out here who, and I use the term, who are involuntarily celibate, who are out here seeking meaningful relationships with women whom they find attractive, but are simply being disqualified from the opportunity to do so, because you have a lot of females nowadays who harbor this mentality, who kind of look at a guy who works as less than. No, you're not good enough for me because you work. When in actuality, there are degrees and there's levels of separation. And a fruitful career might not be defined as entrepreneurism per se, but it's nevertheless well better off than what you would define as entrepreneurs with some other people, some other guys who are out here in the streets struggling. And so I don't really know where the rubber meets the road. I don't know where the end point is, but I do think that this is kind of becoming more pervasive. And not to be all doom and gloom, but in my opinion, I just find it concerning.
Well, you bring up a good point that just because somebody's an entrepreneur doesn't mean they have it. So, and then I was in the comment section because I saw this on TikTok too, and the comment section on TikTok, people was basically saying like, I'm an entrepreneur. I can't just pick up and leave whenever the hell I want.
Right.
It's because I'm a boss. Like
right.
I have things to do. I can't just pick up and leave.
Right.
So that's a fallacy too.
Right.
Again, it makes you question what kind of entrepreneurship she's talking about.
Yeah.
And because if you're really a business person, you know who's like running an operation, where it's like an operation, like you have to be tending to that all the time. And if you do take a trip, it's more or less planned.
Yeah.
Just like, oh, let me give my job 2 weeks to know. Is that hard? Like, let me get my job 2 weeks. Is that a problem?
That's too
No.
that's yeah, apparently that's too unreasonable.
Yeah, it's too long. That's not
Yeah.
spontaneous enough. We need to leave now.
Yeah.
Now? Yeah, like now. It's ridiculous. And that's fairy tale stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know where they've seen this happen in real life. I don't know where they're getting all of this stuff from, but it's fairy tale.
Right.
Man, I don't know if it was in those Zane books or something. I don't know where they're getting this.
Right. But it's so true. Like, even a person who's an entrepreneur, if you're tending to something that you're building, you're tending to that. You can't just pick up and leave that. Like, you're working it. You're working at it. Like, even and I was talking to my sister about this yesterday. And not that she agrees with this, she doesn't, but we were having a conversation. She knows women who think like this, of course. She's younger than me. And it's just like, everybody who's successful has habits, and they develop those habits. It's a part of it. No one's out here just being loosey-goosey, not sticking to certain habits and routines, even when you're an entrepreneur, to be successful. Everybody has their habits and routines. Now, in your mind, you might not believe that that's working a schedule, but it's the same thing, essentially. Like, these guys, people who run businesses, people who are entrepreneurs, they have habits and routines that they stick to, and they follow those because it's worked for them. It's how they've gotten to where they are. So yeah, you're right. Like, you can't, even an entrepreneur is like not just gonna, oh, let's just go get on a plane right now and go. But see, I'm telling you, like, I think in the minds of people like this, it's one of the toxic traits of the mentality of Black people. We are like, Black success still to this day is equated to like entertainers and professional athletes. And so I think in her mind, that's what she's thinking about. I think she's thinking about being with an entertainer or being with a pro athlete, who, by the way, you must be in the off season, because during the season, athletes ain't going to be able to jump and hop and go wherever you want them to go. But I think in her mind, she's thinking about rappers and entertainers and these types of people. And she's coding it as entrepreneurism. But that's what I think she's thinking about, because in her mind, that's what Black success is. A Black successful man is a man who must be doing things in those types of spaces. And therefore, those are the guys who can be able to do those types of things. Mm-hmm. I think she spends a lot of time on her TikTok and her Instagram, and that's where the conjuring of the fairy tale comes from. It's these false perspectives that aren't even really real, but because she's gotten to a point where she lives her life through the prism of these various mediums, it has become her reality. And so she projects it through her rhetoric whenever she speaks publicly. But it really doesn't make sense, and it's entirely impractical. The dangerous part about it, however, is the fact that you do have a lot of impressionable women who might be leaning towards thinking this way. Their beliefs can be reinforced when they see that. And so now they can say to themselves, see, I'm not crazy for feeling like this. She thinks this way too. And now you have a lot of them walking around out here emulating this.
Yeah.
And then and it's like, once they get to a point where they realize that it is indeed a fallacy, now they're 35 and 40, and now they do want to get with a guy who works. But the guys who work, that's not a fair trade for them. A lot of these guys who work, who might still be out here single, they're saying you gave your best years to ridiculousness. Now you want me to accept what essentially are the last remnants of whatever it is that you have left, in terms of being someone who I would have gone for had you been in your prime. So, it's this full circle type thing. And it's just crazy to kind of actually hear it spoken out loud.
Yeah. Well, so here's the thing. So I had a professor. He basically said that he hated rap music, of course. And so, what rap music became. Yeah. And so he basically was saying that they just promote irresponsibility.
Yeah.
Just promote playing all day long. And everything's a game. Everything's play. No responsibility, like, at all. And he said, what do you think you guys are going to do when you listen to that all day? It's play. No responsibilities. And so when you listen to these R&B, whatever you want to call these songs, these heartbreak songs, whatever these people listen to nowadays. It's yeah, man. It's all telling people to. It's not your fault. There's no accountability in that music. Everything's like his fault. His fault. He did this. He did that. And for the guys, all of the music is talking about, f these females. We don't care about them. We don't love them. We just f them and we pass them to our friends, and we're doing all of this, all of this stuff.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And so, what do you think these guys are doing? Listen, see, the thing is, so I have to realize I'm in a different bubble. So then, when I'm talking about how women perceive men, I'm talking from my bubble and my homeboys, and we all in the same bubble, basically, where we don't partake in certain shenanigans.
Right.
But for the most part, if we always talk about the masses of females who get caught up in the shenanigans, these ladies are caught up in it. The reciprocal of that is men caught up in the madness, listening to these songs, preaching about irresponsibility and not even loving women at all. And so when we talk about music that actually creates women as antagonists, how do you think guys are going out there and treating? So, in return, we have this thing where the hot girl summer girls are rapping, and they're talking about finessing dudes because why not? You guys are being so hostile towards us, so why not make hostile music towards y'all? And so now what we have is a tit for tat thing going on. But we don't own none of the record labels.
Yeah.
We don't own any of the records, radio stations. And so these things are being pumped into our feeds by major social media networks. And so people are seeing this on the constant, and they're just reenacting it. Now, where these women are getting this rhetoric from, again, I'm not too sure. We've theorized on many things before, but it's still a thing where they all seem to be reading from the same playbook. It's amazing. And so when this young lady here talking about entrepreneurship, and she just wants somebody to, but then at the end she said that she doesn't want a partner. She doesn't want a partner. She wants a man. Like, what the hell does that even mean?
Yeah, she said, no, I don't want a maid. I want a man.
Oh, she don't want a maid.
That was what she said. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But see, even then, so no, a mate, because she was saying she wants somebody. So So then she said, "Oh, you want a mate?" Then she was like, "No, I don't want a mate. I want a man." Like, what the hell does that even mean?
I don't know.
So it's just like, nah, like that sounds delusional and crazy.
Yeah.
But again, here's the thing, man. People think that just because you have an LLC and you're running your own business and stuff like that, and you're doing your thing, but just because you're doing that, you're a complete human. And just because you're doing that and other people aren't, that you have things figured out that other people don't. And that is a fallacy as well. And so she's speaking from an immature place, her homegirl as well, basically low-key sharting on the man because he had to reschedule their meeting because he had to actually work. And she's speaking as if that was unattractive. Again, that is delusional. If they do want a man that's going to be out here providing all and paying for all of this stuff, then what do you think he's going to want in return? What do you think? You think he has to be loyal? He's paying not to be.
Yeah.
So why does he have to be loyal to you? Why does he have to give you anything? Why do I even have to hear you cry? Yeah. See, that's the part where this girl here, which one is this? This one here. She's confused because she said that she wants somebody there that's understanding. That's why the girl said, "Well, you want a mate."
Yeah.
Because if you want somebody that's there that's understanding, you want somebody to listen to your bullshit. And if you want somebody to listen to your bullshit, he's not paying for everything. If he is paying for everything, he's not going to want to hear that.
He's not.
I'm not here for that. You're here for a service. So I'm here to pay for that service. And
yeah.
Once I'm done with the service, you're not getting paid anymore.
Yeah.
And that's just the end of the exchange. So yeah, I can slide on whoever I want because why? I'm paying for this. So it's such a ridiculous notion because they're putting so much emphasis and power on money that once you put so much emphasis and power on money and you're in a situation where he has all the money. Oh, I'm my own entrepreneur. I make my own money. That's fine. So, but the thing is, you're putting so much weight on the fact that he makes so much. what do you think he does? He puts a lot of weight on that too. He feels as though he's got a lot of power because he's got a lot of money. And so he's going to flex and he's going to exercise that on wherever he wants to and however he wants to. You're not going to be able to control that, man. So at that point, you're not going to be able to have a sustainable relationship at all.
Yeah.
So for her, so that's why I'm saying her logic doesn't sound well thought out. She didn't trace all the breadcrumbs to where it can eventually lead.
Yeah.
So she's just talking out of reaction because she's used to dating guys who worked at a department store, who worked over there. And hey, man, I can't get off ever. Not even on.
Right.
So she's talking about those guys, which again speaks to where she's at. If you were actually dealing with real guys who had real jobs, as if you were speaking about, this actually like salary and making money, she wouldn't be disrespecting it like that.
I agree. Yeah.
So again, speaking from her experience, she's letting me know which level on the totem pole she's at, and it's low on the vibrational scale. So she can speak that way if she wants, but it sounds misguided. So if there's any other women that's out there that's like, yes, girl, yes, and you sitting there co-signing it, then again, and looking at this as a role model type of thing, I would ask you to please reevaluate.
For real.
to genuinely reevaluate, because this is the mentality that will have you alone your entire life. Oh, no, you'll have guys in rotation, and none of them will love you.
Exactly.
So you can make your choice right now, actually.
Yeah.
That's how
I agree. And they'll be the same ones who will say that it was all the men's fault.
Exactly.
And they will also be the people who, like, these are the women who complain because the guy cheated on them. Mm-hmm. And it's like, well, you are the engineer of your own misfortune because you place such a premium on a specific profile of a guy, and you guys are all doing the same thing. And that specific profile only accounts for about 0.1% of the population. So if 0.1% of the population has the options to be with all the women, fidelity is something that you can throw out the window. It's just not an expectation that you can have. As a matter of fact, I would argue that you're being unreasonable for maintaining that expectation, because in the real world, that doesn't make sense. It simply doesn't. And I do think that there is merit to what you're saying. I think, but see, that's what's so important about being able to articulate yourself appropriately. And we, I made this point when we talked about Cam Newton and the way that he said what he said and how everybody came at him. Mm-hmm. We knew what he was saying, but because he didn't express it in the most effective way, he got a whole lot of smoke. And it's just like, I'm trying to give this chick the benefit of the doubt. For all I know, she can just be another one of these shallow women who just think crazy, delusional things. But if she's not, and I'm willing to give her the benefit of the doubt, there are degrees of separation between laborers and, minimum wage and hourly wage and that kind of work. And then there are career paths and career-oriented people like myself. Mm-hmm. I can essentially make whatever schedule I want. And I've paid the cost to be that quote unquote boss. And what she's doing is lumping it all into the same group. And I think that that's kind of an irresponsible rhetoric to spew out there. But I think a lot of them are kind of just thinking along these lines and not understanding those degrees of separation. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's just going to result in them being by themselves forever. Mm-hmm. Until like I said, they'll wise up eventually. But by the time they do, it's going to be slim pickings. And they're going to open themselves up to a wealth of disappointment in their future, and they'll have no one to blame but themselves, even though they will find a way to blame men for it. Mm-hmm. But that's just pretty much what it is. I just am sad and feel sorry for the fact that this type of thing is just being so readily replicated. It is what it is, but we'll see more of it for sure. Pretty much.
It's only getting worse.
Yeah.
It's only getting worse.
Yeah. But we'll go ahead and move on from there. Next